Okay. Okay, so this is probably one of the more important videos, and I'm really going to try and handle this with a level of grace and sincerity and truth, right? So this is just a really important video. So if you've ever had a video that you needed to, it is it was February 10th, 2024. I'm in Colorado Springs at Superstars, staying at the Antlers Hotel. And I just had a very crazy night doing podcasts every day, everything. February 9th was a very, very good day. With that came a set of challenges. And in a way, you guys could call it my first miniature matrix attack, right? Because what you're going to start seeing more and more is as you begin to live your journey, you're going to start seeing a lot of these tests and enemies, right? And you could argue that I'm probably in step 6 of the hero's journey, right? And I think I'm probably there. This is test 6. So step 6, if you guys remember, of the hero's journey is enemies, tests, and allies. And I'm basically living proof of what that looks like. So let's talk about that today because this is one of the biggest parts of your journey that you're going to notice as you develop and as you try to become someone and live your dream, right? Now, let me get into the details and let me just describe what February 9th was like. So we can start out with the good stuff. So remember, all of February 8th, I was in my room studying and working on the game and other aspects of IamSoft's work, right? So after doing that, February 8th, February 9th, I came downstairs, but I didn't I went out to the store and I really didn't engage with anybody at Superstars until 3 o'clock outside of one friend whose name is, we're actually going to call him L, right? He's a good guy. He's got glasses, really, really cool guy. He's got tattoos as well. I really, really like L. I'm going to keep his name anonymous because I'm going to tell you guys what L was going through, and this is where you guys will start seeing the universe is going to tell you things about what you're going to deal with, and it will start preparing you. So L was having a situation where he was talking with a woman, and a lot of this stuff, guys, you're going to realize the enemy works through a lot of women right now. No offense, right? But it's just how a lot of it is. And it's just learning what equals good manners and good conduct, right? But we've lost that wisdom in America. So let's just talk about what that looks like. So this is not to condemn her because I don't even know who this woman is, right? But L was at this place where, and L is married. L is married, right? So he's just being a writer, being imaginative, right? And this is like that free thinking area or whatever. And L is having this connective point with this woman, right? And they're having this really intense conversation. And I don't know necessarily what it's about. I think they were talking about maybe like some of the worries she had been having. And he basically told her that essentially like he found her attractive and he's like he would kiss her if he could, something to that effect, right? And then he felt like it got awkward, and when he asked her about it, she said no. But then he was running in his mind, like being terrified of the consequences of that. Now, some people might hear that and be like, oh, well, what he said was inappropriate, right? But the thing is, once again, he's talking to someone he knows really, really well, right? But there's still that level of fear because he's worried about the backlash in the society. And we're going to talk about that in a second, right? And I tell him, like, well, if you guys are good people, she knows you weren't trying to hurt her, right? And, like, it's perfectly natural for a man to want to kiss a girl. Just don't kiss her. She's not okay with it. Like, don't do that. And this is why something, guys, something that's really good to do is, like, if you cannot talk about a subject with someone, you shouldn't engage in that subject with someone. So if you find, for instance, you can't talk about sex with someone comfortably, that person is not someone you should be making any type of advances on. Right? So, like, when you're gauging and you're meeting a woman, right, you need to see, like, is she available and she's talked, right? And I'm going to talk about what that looks like in a second, right? But it's really important to understand, like, how those boundaries are, like, communicated. But once again, you need to go with what is communicated. Because the thing is, if you project onto people things you've learned from the past or from society, you actually might be getting in your way. Because let's say in another scenario, she was single, he was single, they had a feeling, but he was unable to say anything, right? because he didn't feel confident because he was afraid, nothing would ever happen unless she came up. Eventually, someone has to open up that discussion and be vulnerable about it. That's how all relationships happen. The problem is people don't know how to do that in person anymore, and we've outsourced that talk to social media apps like Tinder and dating. And that has gained a lot of people, probably like this woman, what he was afraid of. They're unable to communicate their basic emotional feelings, right? And recognize that's communication that is being stunted. That's not to the benefit of everybody. Not to say there's anything wrong with the apps, right? Even though there's plenty issues with the apps. But it's not the app's fault someone is unable to communicate their interest or disinterest, right? And being able to communicate that clearly so that it's not misunderstood. So he's terrified, and I'm telling him, like, hey, dude, like, don't worry about that, right? Like, if you didn't do anything wrong, and if she's your friend, whatever, right? And you were in public, you didn't do anything wrong with her. And, like, if she starts gossiping, and, like, but he's legitimately terrified. And I can see why he's doing that, but it's like recognizing, dude, if you offered someone $1 million and they said no, which I've never offered someone $1 million, but I've offered people money and they've turned me down. I don't then apologize for bothering them, because it's like, well, I was here trying to bless you. And, like, if he believes, like, his kissing of someone is so harmful, think about what that's saying to him. So I talked with him for about 2-3 minutes. I told him, like, dude, this is what you're basically saying, is that you somehow don't feel like you're worthwhile here. And that's the wrong message, right? Now, if she doesn't want it, that's one thing. You can just say, okay, that's great, you don't want that. And you need to respect that boundary. But you have not done anything wrong by presenting it. Because as a man, that's what we need to do with women. And then they can tell us yes or no. And then we respect that yes or no, guys. Like, respect yes or no. We recognize that if, like, oh, this is where when we start taking assumption into other people's realities, this is where it can become really, really issues. And this is why the game was structured the way it was. So this was the beginning of the day. Then afterwards, I went out to the store and I got some stuff at the store. And then I was on my way back, and I was at a restaurant. So I need to pee really, really, really bad, and I'm in line. And these people were Canadian that were in front of me, and they let me cut in front of them because they could see I needed to go to the bathroom really, really bad. So I used the bathroom, I give them fist bumps, and I noticed that the waitress came over and was giving me, like, kind of the eye and smiled. So I go over there, and I mentioned that to her smile, and I tell her, like, hey, I'm only in town for a few days, but I'd love to sit down and talk. And she tells me she's got a boyfriend. I'm like, oh, okay, no worries. Your boyfriend's a lucky man. That's my go-to thing, right? The thing is, especially, so one of the things I'll say that is because if I see a woman who appears happy, I'm usually just going to assume that she's in a happy relationship, right? Because I'm curious about that. And it's like my default. You got to understand, like, part of the conversation I have with I have, like, a whole list of people and how I talk to women specifically so that you can vet safely who and what they are. And I'll tell you guys about that in another video. It'll be this video, but it's probably going to be cut out. Or maybe I don't have to. Maybe I can just explain it right now. So the first thing you want to do is check if the person's available, right? And you do that by basically just asking about relationship status. If that's awkward, like, that's a socially acceptable way to do it, right? Now, that might be awkward for someone who's in it, but they've forgotten what that's like to not be in it, right? And recognize that someone asking you if you're married, right? Especially, like, if they can't see you have a ring or if they have a boyfriend, girlfriend, they don't know. And the thing is, as a man, if we're trying to meet women and stuff like that, we have to know how to quickly move through that. So I'm going to ask you, are you married, right? Or are you in a relationship? And so I did that. And, like, because you're flirting, and the thing is, you got to understand, flirting is not an attack. Flirting is a compliment. If someone finds you attractive, it's a compliment. They're not trying to attack you or rape you or do something bad. They're complimenting you, and that's how you need to internalize it. If you're internalizing flirtation and anything other than a compliment, that means you've forgotten what the communication cue even exists for, right? You don't understand how it works. And that there's something messed up in your, like, literally, I'm telling you guys, compliments, like, flirtation is just a compliment. Just like, so if I say to a man, oh, hey, I like your boots and I like your shoes, right? He could interpret that as flirtation, right? But he's just going to take it as a compliment because I'm another dude. He knows I'm not trying to, or he might think I'm not trying to do that. You understand when I say that to a woman, oh, hey, I really like your hair color, right? How you doing? You look really good. That's just a compliment. I have not attacked you, right? And when you're interpreting it that way, that's once again clean water going in a dirty glass, right? Which if you guys want to learn more about, I'll put that link somewhere, or just look up. I need to put it in the link, so I'm going to make sure I put up the dirty glass video so you guys can understand what I'm talking about. And it's just essentially like toxic femininity and like how this works, right? So someone flirting with you is a compliment. That's the first and foremost. So as a man, you're going to send that compliment. And then you're going to ask if she's available. She says yes and gives you a cue to keep going, you keep going. She says like, oh no, I have a boyfriend, or oh no, I'm married, you know to shut that down. Right? Because you're complimenting her. Now you can still compliment genuinely because that's why you did it. But you know now my intention with my questions, right, and how I do from now on is no longer about dating this person. It is about trying to get to know them at best, and trying to do that. You're trying to build a connection that's not based off of sexual interest, right? But you're going to communicate that with the next question. Usually, depending on the emotional state, my next question almost always to anyone I talk to is always about their emotional state, because that will tell you a good deal about who the person you're dealing with is, right? And then you always have to judge based off of their reaction off of that question. And guys, this is the first minute. And literally, if you get good at asking like, making a compliment, and then asking them if they're single, and then asking them about their emotional state. That's 3 questions. That's as far deep as you go. Based off of that, you can tell whether or not you're talking to someone you need to have any kind of conversation with, or you need to let it die. Literally based off of their answer of those questions, right? And it's like a perfect system to get to know anybody. So literally just talk, like if you're trying to know a girl, just compliment them, right? And if you're showing that, you need to be very clear about your intentions up front, right? So that they know, hey, from now on, this is kind of what we're doing. And they're going to tell you whether or not they're okay with that. And then when they're not okay with that, you're just going to ask an emotional question. And then based off of that emotional question, you're going to be able to see, are we going to be able to calibrate, or is this just bad fish and I need to move along, right? And if it's bad fish and you need to move along, boys, move along. Right? Because these type of women will try to work and destroy you if you keep pushing it, or they will. So don't keep pushing it, right? And I'm going to tell you why in a second. So I was talking to Lou about that. Now I was able to do that with the girl in the restaurant. Oh, I actually needed to change that. So I was able to talk to Elle about that. But I was able to talk to Elle about that and really get that out to him, right? But now I go to from the whatchamacallit, I go from there and I go to pick up some stuff from my Amazon packages. And I had some signs that I needed to go get Chipotle, even though I don't like Chipotle, but I went and I got a beef salad there, and I went and I got some sushi. And I had a interview with someone, a podcast that I'd started up. I'll shout out to Gail Carriger. I had an interview with her and she was really, really great. It was super fun. So we were able to go and start that interview, and like I'd go talk to her, and I asked her to like go come over to the table because we were going to have an interview and I wanted to make sure we did it in a quiet place because there's a bunch of people around. She's like, oh cool, yeah, I'll be right over there, right? So then I go upstairs to my room, right, to put some stuff back because I had kind of mismanaged at the time a little bit. So I come back down and Gail and I start our podcast, and it was an amazing podcast, right? Shout out to Gail Carriger. She taught me the hero's journey. Seriously, one of the best things I learned here at Superstars. Like if there was a takeaway from Superstars, even though this whole situation that I'm about to describe has been absolutely chaos, the fact that I was able to get that lesson from Gail Carriger, that was one of the most influential lessons of my life. Like learning about the hero's journey, especially the way she was able to describe it and get into the mythos of it, I thought, literally, I think there are very few teachers on the planet as capable as she is. And she's an author. I'm going to put her stuff, a link out to her stuff, just so you guys can check her out because she's impressive as hell, right? Check out her first book, Soulless. It's a good way to be introduced to her. And I have a podcast from her, right? So check that out while Gail and I, talk about different things, right? So It wasn't as short because parts of it were cut off and things like that with it. And I'm still figuring out this podcasting through the beta. So I appreciate you guys being patient. I wish we could get more from her. When things are more set up and official, perhaps we can get her down personally so we can talk more, because I think I only have like 20 minutes from her. So I'm sorry, guys. Anyway, so I'm going and I go do that. And then I go to the bar, right? Now, I'm going to tell you guys this situation. I'm going to describe the people. So after speaking with Gail, there's another interaction I need to talk about. So Gail was with a mutual acquaintance we have, right? And there was this mutual acquaintance. So even now, as I'm thinking about it, examining my feelings, I realize there's a level of authenticity I need to hack. So I'll just call this acquaintance. I'm going to call them Barbados, right? So Barbados, you're the person with the pink hair and you were wearing goth. We've met a few times. If you get this, you're Barbados. That's your name, right? So there had been a couple times Barbados and I had spoken, and I always felt like there was a little bit of a disconnect if we weren't able to give each other fully attention. I noticed a couple times speaking with her, when I was trying to speak with her or in the past or whatever, and I would like say hi or whatever, she would end up ignoring me, right? And I worried sometimes that like if I didn't give her the attention she needed fully in a moment, that I would be offending her, right? And I know that I felt that sometimes. And I felt like because of that, some of the interactions we had had in the past maybe were a little disingenuous because there was a level of presence that just wasn't in those interactions. And I wanted to make sure moving forward that I did that. But she's now with Gail. And Barbados and I am just like, okay, I don't know how to deal with this, right? And I have this mental overload. So I'm doing that podcast. So I go and I speak with Barbados, and I apologize to Barbados for ignoring her, because that's not her fault, guys. And it's not good to ignore people, right? And so I apologized to Barbados, and we kind of caught up, and I was talking about my method, and I was excited to see her. And she was really cool about it. And she used to live in Utah and is no longer in Utah. And I'm not going to talk anymore about Utah, but she's no longer there, and she's much happier for it. Just like I'm much happier for it. But it's not because Utah's a bad place. There's good people in Utah. That's why I'm going back to see those people, not necessarily because I like the place. Anyway, so we talked to there. Barbados goes off with her boyfriend, who we'll call Ishi. We'll call him Ishi, and Ishi goes with Barbados, and they leave in the SUV. After that, I go to the bar and I get a seltzer water, right? So I'm still completely sober, right? I haven't drank anything, and then I see this. She has dyed red hair. And I look at her name tag. So I'm going to call her Oklahoma, right? That's a decoder. Now, you guys should understand, this is one of my decoders, right? So hopefully Oklahoma will see this video. And if you do see this video, Oklahoma, you need to start paying attention, because I know your real name, and I'm not going to dox you, but we're going to have a very honest, real conversation about what happened, right? And the damages of that, because I don't have a very high opinion of you. And you should know that going in. So if you feel defensive or whatever, pause the video, right? We're going to get into it, and then we'll talk that out or whatever. But I'm just going to tell everybody, right? And I'm not going to dox you. I'm not going to use your real name. But I'm speaking directly to you, Oklahoma, and you know who you are, right? And if you want to ask why your name is Oklahoma, I want you to take the abbreviation of Oklahoma, and those are going to be your initials, right? So anyway, so Oklahoma, basically, I'm talking to Oklahoma, right? And I do this basic method. So I compliment Oklahoma on her red hair, and I tell her it's a good color on her. And then I ask her, and I guess at this point I was flirting, right? That's fair. So I ask Oklahoma, because I'm showing interest. I'm like, Oklahoma, right? And then I asked her if she's single or if she's with someone. And then she said she's married. At that point, I have now changed my intention, because I'm like, oh, snap. Oh, you're married. Da, 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 da. I totally get it. And then I said, well, are you happily married? And then she's like, sure, yeah, whatever. I'm like, sure. I'm like, okay, cool. And then there's another guy, and this one is really, really cool. We'll call him Joe Dominguez, right? Because I actually did a podcast with Joe Dominguez, right? So I turn over to Joe Dominguez. I'm like, how about you, Joe? Are you happily married? And he's like, I'm married. And we start having a joke about it or whatever. Then the bartender comes over. She's a really, really cool lady. Shout out to Gina at Antlers Hotel. All the love in the world. You're an amazing human being. But then we just start talking. So Oklahoma's over here. Joe is talking to his assistant over here. This is a woman in glasses. She's wearing a yellow sweater, right, with like a colored pattern. She's a little rounder and shorter. She's like 5'3", right? And she's sitting there next to Joe, right? Now, I go and I'm talking to Gina, the bartender. I'm talking to Joe Dominguez. And I say one errant comment to Oklahoma, who's over here on my left, right? Because remember, Oklahoma's right here. She's been here the whole time. So I say one thing to try and like make conversation, right? I don't even remember what I said, but it was about what we were talking about over here, right? And then I see Joe's assistant get up in yellow, come over and grab Oklahoma, and they go over to the other side of the bar. Now, guys, people talk about like being autistic and like not being able to recognize social cues. Now, I was always able to kind of pick that up now. So I'm recognizing like that doesn't make any sense because they were talking over here or whatever, and then she pulls her over and takes them over that. And the whole time I'm sitting talking with Gina and Joe over here, right? But now these two ladies move over. And so, because I feel, and remember, I can literally feel it in my body when like someone's not comfortable, right? And now there's times when like no one's like people are uncomfortable, and like I try to do that. But remember, that's why I wasn't talking to Oklahoma, because I can tell Oklahoma's feeling uncomfortable with me talking to her, so I'm not talking to her. I'm just not talking to her, right? And I'm just leaving her be, and I'm maybe saying a few light things to try and show like I'm being friendly. But the thing is, and you guys got to understand, like I grew up in Utah. I got this feeling from people all the time. When you're with someone who's different, and people will just feel uncomfortable. And before, I used to feel like there was something wrong with me. I used to always feel like I'm talking to this person, and like if you're a black guy talking to a white person from like middle of America, Utah, and they just feel uncomfortable, there's going to be a part of you that wants to feel uncomfortable. That's not your fucking problem. And I want to say that right now. If you're around someone and you have not shown them any ill intent and they feel uncomfortable, that's their fucking problem. Do not take responsibility for their feelings, right? Because there's two things that. First off, when you take responsibility for another person's feelings, you're treating them like they're a child. You're teaching them like they don't know how to manage their own feelings, and you're also taking away their sovereignty and their choice. So in some ways, it's literally an assault on agency, which is one of the closest things to evil you can do. So when you start trying to manipulate people's feelings, you're actually doing some evil shit. So don't do it. Allow people to do. Now, if people want to talk about it and they need your support in processing their own feelings, that's where we can show love. But remember, just because you sense it does not mean it is your responsibility, right? Now, you can see it in a way, but remember, I'm trying to heal the world with what I'm doing, right? And that can have an open dialogue. Now, and if Oklahoma wanted to have a dialogue and be like, hey, I kind of felt uncomfortable with that, I'd be willing to listen, right? Because it's not my job to make people feel uncomfortable. But I also recognize there's people who are uncomfortable just from me having darker skin from them or talking about different things. And I don't really care about that, but I recognize some people care about that. So I'm not going to apologize for how they feel. I'm going to continue to show them love, but I'm not going to change or adjust how I'm moving so you feel more comfortable. Like I'm not going to get up and leave because you feel uncomfortable when I have as much a right to be there as you do, right? So that's the first thing, Oklahoma. So Joe's assistant grabs Oklahoma, takes them over to the other side. I sense that, and I feel that something's off. So I look at Oklahoma and the assistant, and I say, hey guys, like, I saw you guys moved over there. Is everything okay? And they're like, yeah, it's fine. It's like, okay, because we were just over here. I'm like, if I made you feel uncomfortable or anything, I'm really, really sorry about that. And like, that's not my intent. And they're like, oh, no, that's fine. We were just talking, right? And we couldn't get anything over there because it's too loud. That's what they said to me. Joe Dominguez and Gina were my witnesses to that statement. So Joe's assistant and Oklahoma go back. I want to talk about the conversation I had with Joe. I put that on a podcast. Really, really cool. But kind of like the spark notes of that is I have a mutual friend. I'll call him Jay, right? Jay with a J, right? And Jay with a J comes over, and I start saying hi to him, and I introduce him to Joe. So I'm like, hey, Jay with a J, and here's Joe. And I find out they have like a mutual interest, because Jay with a J has created a platform, really, really cool. And we'll talk about him. Um, and Joe Dominguez has a book on that platform. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. Like, he has a really, really cool book. Lo and behold, the reason Jay with the J had come over was not to talk about me. I was a nobody. He'd come over to talk to Joe Dominguez, because halfway through the conversation talking with Joe, I see the sticker for the book that's really been kind of blowing up and people were talking about. And I talk about how Jay with the J had done the work with that. And then Joe's like, yeah, it's because I wrote it. And then I realized they had known each other. And I had just introduced them, and I was just being a total idiot, right? So that was kind of funny. I totally missed that social cue. But you know, you don't always catch them all. But yeah, I was introducing people who were mutual friends, and they knew each other. And I was just trying to be friendly, you know, and because I didn't want him to be excluded from the conversation. And then they just played a joke on me, right? And so it was funny. So, haha, guys, I'm going to send this over to you. Very good. Very, very good. But anyway, so they went, and so the guys, by the way, so we're here at the 26th. So this is about part 3. If you want to catch part 2 and part 1 of my rant, my Superstars experience and some of the things here, go check those out. But this is part 3, by the way. So I'm just saying that, because all my limit's 7 to 12 minutes for all my talks, right? And so this would be the 3rd video. So part of what I was then doing, right, is I essentially was like, okay, after talking